Welcome to Our Community. Susie Thomas here with you. We are visiting with Fern Basinski from Pregnancy Choices. Good morning.
Good morning.
Your ministry with Pregnancy Choices is somewhat different, but vital to the organization. Tell us a little bit about what you do, Fern.
I am the Recovery and Reconciliation Coordinator at Pregnancy Choices. And what that means is that I conduct, put together, facilitate groups that are basically healing groups, women who are looking for healing from different issues in their life.
What kinds of issues have you been dealing with?
Well, I began doing post-abortion recovery. I myself came into Pregnancy Choices in 1998 because I myself was suffering from 2 past abortions, was looking for help, and I sure found it at Pregnancy Choices. It was life-changing. I went through a 13-week class, and it was life-changing. And by the time I finished that class, Susie, I knew that I wanted to help other women recover from past abortions.
It's so interesting you would say this because I think of you as being the person who started the healing process with other people. They did have groups back when you yourself were seeking help, and you found help in that. However, you have turned around and written books that now are used for the groups. So how did you get from point A to point B? What was available for you when you were looking for help?
What was available for me was post-abortion recovery groups. We were using a different book at the time. I think that the groups had already been in place for several years. It was 1998 when I joined a group. And then in 1999, I myself began facilitating groups. But it was in place because, as we know, abortion was legalized in 73. Right. By the 80s and 90s, women were looking for help to recover from the guilt, the shame, the suffering, the regret that they had. They were suffering from the past abortions.
What did you feel was necessary to write in a new book?
Well, I used a wonderful Bible study. It was called Forgiven and Set Free for about 10 years. And I was beginning to be too mechanical with that book. I was becoming too familiar with that book. And I was not facilitating with excellence because I was getting stale. And so because of my experience in 10 years, I had a lot of stories that I wanted to share with other women, personal stories that I had encountered through those groups. And I just thought it'd be a great idea to take some of the stories from the Bible of women and take some of the stories from the women that I had facilitated and merge them together, and just to show that human nature really hasn't changed, and suffering and regret and shame really hasn't changed. And that's why I called the book Portraits.
So you're looking at portraits of different women.
Yes.
From long ago and from today.
Yes.
And then all of their stories. And it's amazing how their stories are so similar.
Oh, yes.
What kinds of things do women deal with? Is there some kind of a pattern? Because you are told when you go into a clinic that this is just tissue, you're going to make this problem go away. You go get a nice massage afterwards and get your nails done and you'll be good as new. What is it then that happens that you have seen?
What I've seen, and also from personal experience, is that most women who go into the abortion clinic know that that's a baby, regardless of what they've been told. I already had 2 living children when I had my abortion. I knew that that was a baby. And so I think what I hear women say is they come out of that clinic and they realize what they've done. But they make the choice in a crisis. They make the choice because they don't know where else to go. And they make the choice because they've been told it's not really a baby. But deep in their hearts, most women have told me they knew it was a baby.
What age do you tend to meet these women? Do they come soon to you, or could this be like decades later, or both?
It could be both. But the majority of women, it's several decades later. And the reason for that, I believe, is that women are busy. They get very busy after their abortions. They're raising other children, or they're building their career. They're going to school, and then the children leave, or the marriage breaks up, or something. Something happens to bring all that back to the surface. They've never really forgotten about it, but they've been able to stuff it and keep it inside. And then something happens where it comes. The youngest I've had was 14. The oldest I've had was 78.
14.
Yes.
And she already was feeling regret.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
Had she felt pressured by a boyfriend or parents or
both?
What was her story?
Well, I've had several teenagers, and most of them are pressured by the parents of the boyfriend's parents, her parents, the boyfriend. And then what happens is the schoolmates find out, and now she's being bullied, called a baby killer. And it's very, very traumatic for the teenage brain to really absorb what's happened. And it's very, very sad. Most of them really need professional help.
So when they come to you, and you do not claim to be a counselor or anything like that, this is group discussion to help people process these things using Bible study.
Yes.
What happens in the groups? Because I know in your heart you want these women to know they are forgiven, they are cherished, they are loved, they have value. Tell me about the groups themselves.
Well, we do all of that. We cherish them and give them dignity and respect and listen to them. Most of them really just want to be heard. They want a place where they can express their grief. They want a safe place. They want a confidential place where they can express the grief of their loss, where they can express their regret, their sorrow, their anger, their unforgiveness, and they want to work through those issues because they want to be whole. And they want to put this behind them so they can move on and do the work that Christ has called them to do.
Is it possible to skip a step and just move on?
I haven't found that to be possible.
Yeah. You just really need to go back and walk through it.
That's why a Bible study is so effective, because it's week after week after week of just working through the issues. It's not a matter of telling a woman, you know what, God forgives you, it's okay. That just does not work. It's true, but now in addition to knowing that God's forgiven her, she needs healing.
Yeah. What do you find about the relationships among the women? First of all, groups are about how large?
I like to keep the groups small, 3, 4, 5 at the most.
Mm-hmm. And they don't have trouble sharing among each other, talking about these things with each other?
They don't, because they have waited a long time to get this secret out. It has been just a shadow that has been haunting them for many years, and they are ready to get it out, and to get it out among women who have been there and are not going to judge them and understand and are willing to listen. They're ready to do that.
Do you notice any kind of a bond that begins to grow among the women that are in the groups?
Yes. The bonding is just amazing to see afterwards. They want to keep meeting. I had one group that just didn't want to stop meeting. And because they didn't want to stop meeting, it actually developed into a Bible study, which is still going on today. And that was almost 20 years ago.
Oh, my goodness, how neat. How many women have gone through this program?
Oh, Susie, I've really lost count. I would say a few hundred.
So you had written portraits, and you've used that as a Bible study to help people specifically with the grief after experiencing an abortion or multiple abortions.
Yes.
You found that that's not the only reason women grieve. What happened next?
Well, what happened next is I found that women who had gone through the post-abortion recovery now wanted to deal with other grief issues in their life, maybe a divorce or the loss of a parent or the loss of a spouse, the loss of a child, any kind of loss, the loss of a job, financial loss. There are so many other grief issues that are very serious issues for women that they've not been able to get past. And maybe it happened decades ago, maybe it was more recent. So I thought I wanted to keep helping them. And so I wrote the grief recovery book, Refuge. Really,
you can't go through life without having loss. No. Everyone experiences loss. That's kind of life. You go from loss of one thing into a new chapter, and then a loss of something into a new chapter. There's a string of losses throughout life. Do you see something that ties the grieving of severe loss? Is there something different in a person besides just going step by step by step through life with, a loss of this, a loss of that, and then people who need groups? Or does everybody need groups? That's a long, long question.
Well, I don't think groups is for everyone. I have occasionally done a one-on-one with a woman because she was so traumatized that she actually could not be in a group. And so I have done that. But the group dynamics is so amazing to see women help each other. They actually help each other through their losses, and they become empathetic with each other, and they just love each other, and they love on each other, and it's just so wonderful to see what happens in the group dynamics.
Well, I'm just trying to think of group communication, knowing how you kind of go from point A to point B when you're establishing trust and all those kinds of things. Do what you observe, does that seem to be similar from time to time, or does every group take on its own life? How does that work?
I love that question. And I'm so glad you asked, because I am just amazed at how every group takes on its own personality. It is just wonderful. And it keeps it so exciting for me, because I never know how this group is going to develop and how they're going to bond and what kind of direction they're going to go in. And I love it. I love to see that happen. I love to see women bonding, and I love to see the groups form their own personality.
Some people might be listening and they think, I've been sitting in a church pew for 20 years and I've never let anyone know this, that I still deal with this. I deal with it every time I look into my children's faces. What would you recommend for that person?
I would first of all say I was that person. I was that woman for 20 years because I did not know that there was such a thing as after abortion healing. And when I found that out and I called Pregnancy Choices, I was just so relieved of my secret and my guilt. And so I would say, don't sit there another minute. There is help. There is help for you. You do not have to sit in that grief. You do not have to struggle alone.
I've heard you say there's something powerful in the Me Too. Can you elaborate on that? Just finding out that there is someone else that has walked that path as well.
Well, the Me Too event takes place. It's an annual event, and it takes place in Columbus. And what it is it is a gathering of all women who are post-abortive, who have been through healing, and who are leaders. And it's amazing. We have over 120 people, women there, and we have a speaker, Julie Ziegler, who is just amazing, gives her testimony. And it's just a great time to celebrate our healing together and to encourage us and to empower us to keep going, because it's wearisome. It can be wearisome. And it encourages us to just keep going. And we see the freedom that we have, and we're celebrating that. We're celebrating each other. We're celebrating Christ. We're celebrating all that He's done for us and how far He's brought us.
I think there might be people who have just a misconception of what a post-abortive woman looks like, when in fact what I'm hearing you say is it crosses all boundaries, all socioeconomic groups. We would be very, very surprised if we took a look at the gathering of Me Too and see who's there, would we not?
Yes. Yeah.
Is there something in those words, Me Too, that takes place inside a woman that just to know, oh, I'm not alone? Talk about that.
Yeah, that it's the secret thing again, because most women have not told anyone. And so whenever someone approaches her and shares her abortion experience, she can say, maybe for the first time to someone, Me Too.
Is it important for a woman to let me say this again, how wide should a person feel free to let that secret out? Are there people that it's wise to share it with? Is it still wise to maybe not feel like you have to tell the whole world? What do you recommend there as far as a person in their healing, to be able to not have to feel like they're holding it in anymore, but also is there a circle of people that it's healing to let it out with?
Yeah, that's a big question, and there's a lot of answers to that. But I just want to say that within our group dynamics, we talk about disclosure. We call it disclosure.
Who needs to know? Who does need to know?
And when do they need to know? And how do we tell them? And we go through that with them to help them, because that becomes a very scary issue for them. Oh, now that I've come through this, do I have to tell everybody? And the answer is absolutely not. I myself was called by the Lord. I knew I was called before I ever finished that group. I was called to share, and now I can speak before hundreds of people. Before my healing, I could not even stay in a room where the word abortion was spoken, and no one knew about my abortion.
We're speaking with Fern Buzinski. She is author of a couple of books, Refuge and Portraits. Going to be back after these words. You're listening to Our Community.